Thank you. Welcome back, folks. Are we ready for the jury, Mr. O'Toole?
Just two quick things, Sean. Very quickly. I apologize for being late. I misplaced my file thinking that we would get to Detective Tompkins this afternoon. The delay is my fault.
No problem.
Also, I'm going to put Detective Tompkins on as we did in the earlier trial for introductory purposes, and I'm not going to go any farther than that, just so the defense knows that I plan on putting him on again in a number of different stages throughout the course of the trial. So.
Understood.
Yeah.
Any quarrel with that?
No.
Okay, thank you. All right, then, Kenya, I think we're ready for the jury then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rise for the jury.
Oh,
Yeah, I
right.
was just about to move it.
And we'll-
Yes.
Thank you.
Isn't this why we have extras?
What's that?
Isn't this why we have extras?
Exactly. You had one not too long ago. Welcome back, folks. Please be seated. As you can see, you've got your notebooks and pens there, and if you need a refill of your notebook or your pen stops or whatever, just kind of wave me down. I'll make sure you get resupplied, okay? Thank you very much, folks. So, Mr. O'Toole, if you'd go ahead and call your first witness, please.
Thank you. I'm going to see if we can call Detective Scott Thomas.
And Detective, if you could just step up here and raise your right hand, I'll swear you in and we'll get started. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Please have a seat.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Have you state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
Scott Tompkins, Tompkins.
I'm wondering if the microphone might be a little...
I'm turning it up now, but if you could tilt it up towards you, sir, that probably works a little better. Thank you.
You're soft-spoken. I introduced you as a detective. Who are you a detective with?
I'm employed by the King County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been a police officer generally?
I've been with the Sheriff's Office, next month will be 25 years.
And any police experience prior to the Sheriff's Office?
No.
Could you give the jury a thumbnail sketch of your education, training, and experience as a police officer?
I started in 1991. I completed the General Basic Law Enforcement Academy. It was held in SeaTac. When I left the academy, I was assigned to Precinct 4, which is our Burien, White Center, SeaTac precinct. Worked patrol from 91 to 94. In 1994, I went into the SeaTac Street Crime Unit, which was a plainclothes unit dealing mostly with street-level narcotics and vice and things like that. In 1997, I went into the Fraud and Organized Crime Unit within the CID unit of the Sheriff's Office. I did that for 18 long months, and then in January of 98, I went into the Major Crimes Unit for the Sheriff's Office. And the Major Crimes Unit is robberies, homicides, felony assaults, and kidnappings that don't have a sexual component to them.
Have you been in major crimes then ever since 1998?
Ever since.
Okay. Any particular training with respect to being a detective for major crimes?
A lot of on-the-job training, a lot of internal training within the Sheriff's Office, but I have attended several homicide courses over, mostly towards the beginning of my stay in major crimes, but even as of a couple years ago, I went to a 40-hour class on a homicide conference. So
When you say homicide courses, that sounds like a pretty general topic. Are there particular disciplines within that, such as interviewing or investigation or something else?
Exactly, yeah. A typical week-long course would break it down into a section on interviewing, maybe a section on evidence collecting, maybe a section on testimony, things like that you would need as part of your background as a homicide detective.
And when you say a section on testimony, what does that mean?
I've taken classes or courses over my time about how to testify and how to look the jury in the eye and things like that. And
so that suave demeanor we see now is the product of education.
Project of 18 years.
It sounds good. Can you give us a little bit of an idea of how the major crime unit is sort of organized in the way it responds to crimes? In other words, is it geographically done? Are you guys on a rotation system or something else?
It's a little bit of both. There's 12 of us and 2 sergeants within the unit. And the unit is kind of broken down into north and east and then southwest part of the county. So the southwest part of the county is Burien, White Center, SeaTac, Skyway, places like that. The majority of our detectives are assigned to that area of the county. That's where I've been assigned almost my whole tenure there. And then other detectives pick up the north caseload, which would be Shoreline, Kenmore, and then out the east, like Maple Valley, Covington, those areas. That being said,
For holidays.
on the weekends and holidays, we do have somebody covering on standby. So there's always somebody that they can get a hold of right away that can go to the scene while they're calling other detectives who may not be readily available, trying to find people to back that person up. So one person's always available.
And are you partnered up with another detective when you have lead responsibility, or are you on your own?
We don't necessarily have partners that we work with. We traditionally have people we work together with more often than not, because we work in the same area of the county. But it's a team effort. So there'll be a lead detective, and there'll be people assigned to help that person.
So if you're primarily been assigned to the Burien area, how do you end up with an assignment out in Carnation?
Yeah, I don't know. We were all around the office when the call came in. Somebody had the radio on, so we were listening to it in real time. And one of the supervisors at the time, Sergeant Gates, suggested that I might be able to take the case. And that's how it started.
So where was your office back in December of 2007?
We were down at the Regional Justice Center in Kent.
And you recall then how it was that you came to learn about this case, or learn that there was a potential criminal investigation?
Yeah, that was the day after Christmas. We kind of had a light number of detectives in there because of the holiday. But I remember we were all kind of around one of the main cubicles in the office as the kind of the flow of traffic would take you. And somebody had a police radio on. We were listening to this coming out from the deputies responding to the scene and later searching the scene. So, you know, there's a possibility that it's a homicide. It's a possibility that it's a murder-suicide. And so those are kind of the things running through our heads as we're listening to this. Shortly after we hear the details, we leave our office in Kent and drive to the scene. Driving there, we'll have a police radio on, so we're listening to the deputies as they're going around securing the property as they're dealing with the reporting party and Ms. Teeley. And so we are getting the updates of additional bodies being discovered on the property.
And when was it that this happened, that you learned of this case, that you were in the office, and that you decided to respond? What day?
The 26th, and about 8:10 in the morning.
And December 26, 2007?
Yes.
At some point, did the facts of what you were hearing change? By that I mean the nature of the potential crime, or the number of victims, or was everything sort of known to you right up front? In other words, you came into it when all the victims had already been discovered.
No, it was still evolving. I think all of the victims had been accounted for by the time we arrived at the property, but we could still hear the deputies announcing to the dispatcher that they were finding additional victims.
So you left then, you said about 8:10 in the morning from Kent?
Yes.
Do you remember what time it was you would have arrived at the location?
About 9:15, about 9:15.
And do you remember what the address of that location is?
1806 346th Avenue Northeast.
In which town?
It's unincorporated King County, but it would be addressed off of Carnation.
And let me ask you formally, is that in the state of Washington?
It is.
So you guys leave at about 8:10. What time would you estimate you got to the scene?
9:15.
And
I did. 9:15.
And were you by yourself or traveling with anyone else?
I was in my own car, but there was a group of us traveling together from the RJC.
When you arrived, could you describe for the jury sort of what the scene looked like, and maybe start with the weather, who was there, what was going on?
It was cold. Seemed a little dark. I think mostly because of the tree line and the tree coverage. There was patrol deputies on scene and a supervisor. They had set up an initial crime scene, so they had blocked off the road and protected certain areas that they knew might be important for evidence. And when we arrived, we were debriefed by them as far as what they've done, what they've seen, and what needs to be done.
Your Honor, if I might, can I just inquire if all the jurors can hear it all right?
Sure.
Okay.
Can
Thank
you hear okay? And if you could maybe turn that mic up towards you, it sort of works better. Yeah. Thank you.
You're
Good.
welcome.
Turn it up as far as it will go.
Oh, thank you, Your Honor. So you're there about 9:15 in the morning. You've described what you saw and all. When you talk to these deputies who had preceded you to the scene, where did that conversation take place?
We initially kind of set up on a gravel road or maybe an easement road that leads up to what will later become the Wilson property, the defendant's home, and then the Anderson home up above. So it was a stretch of maybe 100 yards of gravel road that was off of 346, I believe. So that's where we kind of lined our cars and kind of established a command post, if you will, initially.
So you mentioned gravel road and the Wilson's residence. What does that area also look? What does it sort of generally look like along that gravel road as you travel up it?
There are animals, gated animals, farm animals on one side, I believe forest on the other a little bit, and then it goes on to the Wilson property where they more have an established yard and things like that around their home.
Did you use any portion of the Wilson's property as a base or as a sort of command center at all?
We later did, not initially when I arrived, but as more resources begin to come, one of the things we have is a mobile command center, and because we figured we're going to be there for some time, the special operations portion of the sheriff's office deployed and set up that mobile command center for us to use.
Okay. Is that what, a big truck or what?
It's a huge RV that's been specially equipped with the things that we would use at a mobile command post: fax machines, telephones, TVs, things like that.
So you're talking then to the initial deputies there down there on that easement road right near the Wilson's home.
Yes.
Let me ask you, maybe this is obvious to everybody but me, so why are you talking to them then as opposed to going driving up the hill and talking to them up there?
Well, we wanted to know what we needed to do. One of the things as a detective or as a homicide detective is once we get to a scene, we kind of grind to a halt for a minute, see what we need to do, prepare for what we need to do as far as resources, who's going to do what, do we need more bodies, things like that, and then move forward with the plan. So initially, we're there to take in all the information and form our plan as to what we're going to do. So we want to talk to the people that had been there first, the deputies and the sergeant. We have a witness or a reporting party, Linda Teeley, that'll need to be interviewed. And one of the reasons, to answer your question, that we don't go right up to the scene is we need a search warrant first to enter the property. And so when this came out at 8:10, one of the detectives volunteered to stay behind at the office, write up a search warrant and get approval from the judge to go onto the property and begin our collection of evidence and things like that.
Now when you say a search warrant to go onto the property, do you mean to go past the gate or to go up to the property at the top of the hill?
Both. We kind of used that gate when we got there as the property line.
So you get there, you do some debriefing. Are you the person who's making assignments to the other detectives because you're the lead, or you have a supervisor or someone superior to you who's making the assignments?
It's a little bit of both, and you kind of mix and match with the personnel you have coming. You may have somebody who's really good at collecting evidence, and you assign them to the evidence. Somebody else is good at interviewing, so you'll assign them that. You're kind of just assigning different tasks that are going to have to be completed as part of the case. As a lead detective, I guess I could do that. I think it more comes to the job of the supervisor or the sergeant, Sergeant Toner, Sergeant Gates, that would say, can you do this, can you do that, things like that.
And both Sergeant Toner and Sergeant Gates on scene there?
They eventually both were, and both had roles in the case. I'm not sure if they were in that initial wave that responded with me, if both of them were.
When you first arrive and you're being debriefed by the deputies who initially responded and you're down below near the Wilson's residence, are there deputies up top who are securing the main house, the Anderson home?
I believe they were. I believe we left deputies around the outer perimeter of the property so that no one could come onto the property or leave the property. And they wouldn't have taken an active role in searching or investigating, but they would be there as security, basically scene security. There was a pretty substantial green belt that went around the Anderson's property where I think we wanted to make sure that nobody was going to come on or go off without our knowing.
So eventually, did you then go up the road and past the two residences that are on 346th Avenue Northwest?
Eventually, yes.
About what time would you say that was?
Like closer to after 10 o'clock that morning.
At any point were you involved in entry, forced entry or otherwise, into either of those two residences before the search warrant was obtained?
The lower property that turned out to be the defendant's home, in clearing the overall property, the initial deputies they knocked on the door and felt they heard movement inside, but they didn't get any response. So when we heard that, we felt that that could be part of the crime scene, and one more victims, or suspects, which we don't want. We need to clear that because we're going to be working with our backs turned to them, basically. So the decision was made to enter that property, search for victims, search for suspects, and then exit pending the search warrant. So we did it kind of under exigent circumstances.
Is that standard operating procedure for that type of an investigation?
Well, it doesn't come up a lot, but based on those facts, it would be common or expected.
So about, you said 10 o'clock or so, you went up, was the search warrant obtained then, right before you went up the hill to actually go up to the main residence?
Yes.
That was about, what, quarter to 10 or 10 o'clock?
That sounds right.
And just sort of generally, by way of an overview, tell the jury where you went and what you did once you finally were able to go up that road.
Looked over the scene, again, to see what kind of resources we're going to need, how much manpower we'll need, what assignments are going to be doled out. And at that point, not much else. Taking some notes about the overall scope, I guess, of what needs to be done.
And what did you determine, at least in the initial stage, needed to be done at that point?
That we were going to assign some detectives to work on the Anderson home with the homicide victims. That some other detectives would be searching the lower property where ultimately we found the defendant lived. There's going to be some people assigned to do background investigation as to who these people are and who may want to harm them, who should be there, who should be in that home typically, and maybe who should be there and isn't right now, those kind of type of things.
Now, during the course of the investigation, were you aware if any deputy was assigned the task, or detective, was assigned the task of videotaping the area?
Yes, a couple of them were.
Okay, do you remember who they were?
Detective Laura Hoffenbecker and Detective Mike Brown.
Okay. Have you had a chance to view that videotape?
I have.
And is it a fair and accurate sort of representation of how you recall the scene looking on December 26, 2007?
Yes, it is.
State's Exhibit 1 is marked for identification. And State's Exhibit 2.
Let me hand you what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit number 1. I'm going to ask you if you can identify for us, for the record, what that is.
This is a DVD of the video shot that morning at the 806 house, which is where the Andersons lived.
And is it a fair and accurate representation, again, of how the approach to that house looked and how the outside or exterior of the house looked on December 26, 2007?
Yes, I viewed it the other day, and it is a good representation of it.
By any chance did you put your initials on it?
I did, to mark it.
Yes, it would offer what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit number 1.
Any objection to one, counsel?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. One submitted.
Your Honor, Ms. Morales has advised me that the image may be a little bit dim on this
Yeah, we can.
fangled device here.
You can get the lights if you like.
If possible, we may need to do both sides if it's possible with the courtroom.
Okay, let's see how it works.
we sit through this delay, can you tell us what we're looking at here, Detective Tompkins, on Exhibit 1?
You're looking generally northward on the dirt road that leads up to the Anderson property. To your right would be eventually the Wilson's home. And if we walk straight ahead, I think we're going to come across the gate.
And you recognize the people who are walking there in the background?
You know, at this time I don't.
Michelle, is it possible to pause it? Victor Tompkins, may I ask you, when you first arrived, to the best of your recollection, was the gate that we see in this image here at 11 o'clock and 06 seconds, was that open or closed when you first arrived, or do you recall?
I don't recall when I first arrived if it was open or shut.
And does the date and the time that's displayed appear to be accurate in terms of your recollection of when the deputies first went up the road, or at least close in time?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Possible to pause it? Tom, if I can ask you, this residence or this opening we see on the left side of the screen at 11:01 and 35 seconds, can you tell us what that is?
That's where Michele Anderson and Joe McEnroe lived within the property. This is the road that kind of splits. This goes up to her parents' home, and this goes to their trailer.
And could you just briefly describe for the jury what that trailer looks like in terms of size and dimension orientation?
It's a single wide trailer, I believe brown in color. It has a set of stairs going up to the door.
Thank you. Possible to pause it there for a second? Thank you. Detective Tompkins, do you know, as we look at this scene, which is for the record at 11:13 and 17 seconds, the cars that we see in this image, do you know whether these are all cars that were there originally, or whether some of them are sheriff's vehicles or something else?
A mix of both, I think. I think this is going to be a sheriff's patrol car here. There may be some more up in the driveway once we get that far, but others were owned by Wayne Anderson or the family.
And do we see, at least start to see the main house, excuse me, the main house at 1806, 346 Northeast?
Right. We're walking up the road. This is the path that Linda Teeley would have taken to get up to the home. And as you get about right up in here, next to that patrol car, you're going to see the home.
Is it off there to the right?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other big buildings that we're going to see as we approach the top of the hill there?
To our left over here, just out of the screen, is a shop that Wayne Anderson maintained. And then a couple outbuildings to the side in the back of the home.
Thank you. Is that the front door of the residence we're seeing there at 11:19:24?
Yes, that's the front porch.
Pause it. The side of the building that we're looking at here, for the record, we're at 11:21 and 17 seconds. It's on the left side of the screen. Do you know which direction that wall is in terms of where it's facing, north, south, east, or west?
It's generally the west side of the home.
Can you tell us or tell the jury what is on the other side of that wall on the inside of the house? Which rooms?
This would be the corner of the dining room. The kitchen would be along this wall right here, and then I guess it'd be the living room would extend over this way.
Thank you. Can you tell us what we're looking at here at 11:21 and 39 seconds?
So a bullet hole in the glass coming from the inside of the home going out, and it's on the other side of that is the dining room area, the dining room table.
Thank you. Well, hold on, if I could. Do you recall whether this video shows the image of one of the victims in it?
Eventually it will, yes.
Okay, and which victim is that, if I could ask you?
Pardon me?
Which victim?
I believe it's going to show Wayne Anderson and possibly Judy.
Okay, in front of the shed?
Yes.
Thank you. Here at 11:37:36, are we again at the run to the front side of the house and the front door?
Yes, this is the stepping up onto the front porch and then to the front door.
Now, at the point that this video was shot, do you recall whether any of the victims' bodies, either inside or outside the house, had been examined by the medical examiner or removed?
They had not been.
No, this might be a good place to break. It's unnatural.
So, ladies and gentlemen, please leave your notepads and pens there on the chair. I'm going to excuse you to the jury room, and Kenny will release you for the noon hour momentarily. Again, please don't discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. Don't do any internet research or any research whatsoever on the case or the law or anything of the sort. And again, when you report back here for the afternoon, please report right back to this courtroom. Don't linger in the hallways and so forth, as I've told you before. That's designed to help you avoid any inadvertent contact with the witnesses in this particular case. So come right back to this jury room at 1:15, and we'll endeavor to get you back out here at 1:30. Thank you very much, folks. See you shortly. And please be seated, folks.
thank you.
Terrific, thank you very much, I appreciate that accommodation. And I'll let the jury know that when we get back to lunch, that they'll be released tomorrow afternoon, so they'll know that they've got an afternoon they can use to themselves.
Would you be shouldering the blame for that, or? I'm kidding.
I would be more than happy to, counsel, since it is my issue, not yours. And what I'm going to ask is if the spectators could remain seated until Ms. Anderson is transported, that would be very helpful. I forgot to mention that to you earlier this morning, so thank you for your cooperation, and we'll see you all at 1:30.
Great.
Try to maintain that pace.